Hello, I'm Stephan Schwartz. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the Schwartz Report. Today I want to talk about something you never hear anybody talk about, and yet it shapes our world in a dozen ways. When you think of magnetism, what comes to your mind? The little gray metal tabs you use to put family pictures on the front of your refrigerator? Or maybe it's the compass you were given when you were a Boy Scout or a Girl Scout. Do you ever think of magnetism as one of the most mysterious and least understood forces in our world? Do you connect those little magnets on the refrigerator with Earth's geomagnetic field, the GMF as science knows it? Or do you think of the story of magnetism in the GMF as a story of unseen force that has shaped history and continues to do so down to the present day? William Gilbert, an English physician and natural scientist, published something called De Magneti, in which he presented what became the first proto-modern view, arguing that the Earth itself was a planetary magnet and that compasses responded to the Earth's magnetic field. Now you can remember it was only recently that people in the West had begun to understand that the Earth went around the sun, not the sun around the Earth. Gilbert's interest in magnetism arose initially because he observed that when a piece of amber was stroked with a piece of silk, creating static electricity, it exerted a force over certain lightweight things. And since amber was known in the Greek world as electron and electrum in Latin, Gilbert coined the term electrus to describe the phenomena, and from that we get the word electricity. It would be yet more centuries, though, before scientists moved beyond Gilbert's original model. It was as late as 1919 when British physicist Sir John Larmor, Fellow of the Royal Society of Great Britain, extended Gilbert's idea, arguing that the Earth itself acted as a self-exciting dynamo, as he said, quote unquote. But it was not until the 1940s, think about this is relatively recent, that German-born physicist Walter Maurice Eliezer, who like Einstein and others had immigrated to the US, proposed the modern understanding of the geomagnetic field, the GMF. And over 1946 and 1947, Eliezer published a series of papers presenting the argument that the Earth had a liquid outer iron core and a solid inner core, and that the outer core spun as the Earth rotated. And a few years later, his views were seconded by Sir Edward Bullard, a pioneer in the emerging discipline of geophysics. So this whole business about magnetism and the geomagnetic field is very recent. This is not some ancient science. The work of Eliezer and Bullard was subsequently supported by actual physical measurements in seismology and geosciences, and allowed the present-day view of the Earth as having a solid inner core and a liquid outer core. This is still deep beneath the surface of the Earth, both with a composition more of metal, mainly iron, than rock, and a rocky mantle, and all of this below the thin crust that's all we can see directly. Energy from radioactivity travels outwards as heat producing thermal convection in the core. It seems that this convection is the cause of the Earth's magnetic field, although even to this day, our knowledge of the core and its dynamics are sketchy. The strange thing is that we think of the Earth's north geomagnetic pole, currently is actually located far north near Greenland. It's actually the south pole of Earth's geomagnetic field, and the south pole is the north geomagnetic pole, and it's currently located along the Antarctic coast between Wilkes Island and Adélie Land. What few people realize is that both poles are not fixed. They move, and not at a fixed rate. Since it was first studied in 1831, what we know as the North Pole moved around at a rate of a bit over 9 miles per year. And then suddenly in the mid-1990s, for reasons that we don't understand, it speeded up to almost 35 miles per year. We do know that in some way these movements are the result of fluctuations in the GMF. And so it's only been within a single living person's lifetime that we have understood that what makes life possible on planet Earth is this geomagnetic field produced by the Earth itself, a field that extends from Earth's deepest interior out to where it meets the solar wind. The magnetosphere is the region of space surrounding Earth where the dominant magnetic field is still the magnetic field of Earth rather than the magnetic field of interplanetary space. Charged particles flowing out from the sun become trapped in the Earth's magnetic field lines, much as iron filings are caught by a child's magnet. And that this is what forms the Earth's magnetosphere. In the NASA images from space, the magnetosphere looks like diaphanous veils of blue that undulate around the Earth, protecting and caressing it. You can see it in the image. The pressure of the solar wind, the electrons being thrown off by the roiling activity of the sun, compresses the field on the day side of the planet, while on the night side the field stretches out, a long trailing veil streaming out into space. As the Earth is buffeted by the ever-changing solar winds, the magnetosphere is in a state of constant flux, and the GMF itself is in dynamic flux. Now, what people don't understand is that life is only possible on Earth because of the geomagnetic field and the magnetosphere it creates, because that shields us in our Goldilocks position in the solar system, so that we're not fried by the storm of particles that issue from the sun episodically in epic storm solar cycles, what affects other planets. The Earth is in a kind of protected state. Very few people outside of the scientific world pay much attention to any of this. The GMF, if they even know what it is just this vague concept. But I wanted to get into it because, as I'm going to tell you in a minute, it has an enormous effect on our culture. We are also beginning to understand that this GMF and our connection to it has an effect on our consciousness and our culture. The late, very eminent German statistician and psychologist Cuthbert Ertl of the George August University in Göttingen, Germany, over several decades analyzed databases on patents, copyrights, publication dates, music compositions, and famous paintings. His research revealed that bursts of cultural creativity are actually not constant, but rare historical anomalies that have peculiar characteristics of happening at the same time all over the world in spurts that last for a couple of decades. Ertl compared these periods and correlated them with solar activity. And just as he was able to show in the laboratory, he discovered that when solar activity was calm and the GMF was unperturbed, creativity increased. These historical periods, Ertl argued, were directly modulated by the fluctuations in the GMF, and that the correlations were so strong that he developed a series of 6 what he called observations. The first observation was that bursts of cultural creativity are rare historical anomalies that last a couple of decades. Think about that. People are not creating at the same level in the same ways consistently through time. Instead, it comes in bursts. The second observation, bursts of creativity co-occur jointly in different cultural fields. That is, they occur in medicine and painting and music at the same time. So it depends on what the specialization of the person who's creating whatever it is. If it's a physician, it's in medicine. If it's a physicist, it's in some area of science. If it's a painter, it's about creating artwork. The third observation, bursts of creativity in different fields occur in a regular succession. The fourth observation, bursts of creativity occur simultaneously in independent cultures. So if it's happening in the United States, it's also happening in China. This is about a change in the geomagnetic field, which is affecting the consciousness and creativity of the whole human species. The fifth observation, bursts of creativity are independent of the total number of creators. And the sixth observation, bursts of creativity correlate directly with solar activity. So what science is telling us, based on the research from many disciplines, is that this unseen force, the geomagnetic field, shapes our world from individual DNA to social culture. And it's doing this constantly. And based on what is happening with the GMF, different things consistently occur in cultures all over the world. This unseen force that shapes our world is affecting us now. I think there ought to be a little more conversation about this, a little more anticipation and understanding of what it means. Thank you.